Okay, welcome back to the messy workbench down here in my little workspace. Welcome back to another edition of the Minneapolis Northwestern N-Scale Model Railroad monthly video journal. I want to follow up on last month's journal, which I think was not very well done. It was a little too quick, too thrown together. I was just in such a hurry, didn't have much time to really put together a nice video for you. So I'm going to try to take a little more time in demonstrating how I'm trying to go about making these little street lights. You can see I've got kind of a working model here. This one's not really complete. It was my first attempt at just trying to work this out to see how I can get this thing to how to build it and how to make it work. And you can see it's kind of working. I mean, this one's a little dim. I'm not sure why that one's kind of not as bright as the other, but you get the idea of what the end project is going to be. This is just a one little traffic light I've put together, and I want to back up a little bit and kind of start from the beginning and explain how this whole thing works for anyone who might be new to these sorts of little projects. I mentioned everything's working off an Arduino board. You got one here. This is what's controlling the lights, and I'll go into a little more of how this thing is set up, how it works, and the circuitry and all that. So last month was just too quick and dirty, and this month I want to try to take a little more time to show this whole project from start to finish, in case anyone really wants to follow along and make some traffic lights for your own layout. We'll dig into this a little deeper this time. Alright, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using an Arduino Uno board here for controlling the lights. This is a programmable little module. This has got a little mini processor in here, and you can program these to do any number of tasks. It can be very complicated, they can be very simple. You can see they've got two power places where you can plug in power. I've got an adapter here. I'll just plug this in real quick. You can kind of see what happens when you plug in some power. Get a one little LED pops on here, but you can see it. This little LED is on here, and you can see you've got some power. The other one is it can also run power that comes off of your computer that you use to upload whatever program you've got for this. Programs are called sketches. They're basically little text files that you edit and compile and download into the Arduino board. And depending on your code that you load into this, it then becomes programmed to do whatever little project you want it to do. And there's all kinds of Arduino projects. I'm not going to go into a lot of the basics on this. I suggest you look up some Arduino tutorials on YouTube, which is just what I did. I recommend one fella that has got a nice series. His name is Paul McWhorter. I'll put his name up here for you in a bit, and he's got a real nice series on just starting from the basics, how these things work, how to set them up on your computer, get the programming language working, and how to compile programs and start being productive with these little things. But they're very fun. I'll jump into the coding and so forth a little bit later, but for now I just want to review the setup I had for the traffic lights. So bear with me a minute here, and we'll go through that, run through that setup. Okay, I'll go over some of the components you need for this little setup here. First we'll start off with the LEDs. I've got two each, one red, two green, two yellow, two red LEDs. I've got some jumper cables. I've got two red, two green, two yellow, and one black. And then I've got 6 100k ohm resistors, and we're going to use the Arduino board, of course. We're going to use there are digital and analog ports on this board. I'm going to be using the digital pins. can see there's numbers here. They start to 0 down here and they go all the way up to 13. And then there's a ground connection. So those are the connections we'll be using in this little project. So I'm going to start with my breadboard. And we'll take one resistor. And I'm going to plug it into the negative slot here and bring that first resistor down here. There, try to make it nice and neat. One resistor here, and I'm going to start with my green light, green LED. I'm going to take the negative pole. You can see the positive on the LEDs here. The positive is always the longer of the two poles. I'm going to put the negative pole in the same slot as the resistor coming off the negative pole. I'm going to do that for each light here. So bear with me, and I'll do that for each light. Okay, now what I've done here, very simply, you can see my little breadboard here. I've got 100 k ohm resistors. All the negative poles are tucked into my negative rail here on the top. Then we jump them over to the main part of the breadboard here, and each LED, the negative pole is in line with the resistor, and the positive pole is right here. So you can plug that in and plug in the LEDs, negative poles in the same slot as the resistor. So I got 6 of them here. 2 sets of lights, one representing the opposing traffic, opposing lanes. Now we're going to take the connect this to the Arduino board. We're going to start with the ground wire, which I'll use a black cable. I'm going to plug that into my negative pole here, negative lead over here, and this is going to go to, turn this around the right way so you can see this. This is going to go to the ground. So all the common negative leads from the LEDs are going to the ground. You can see a little white label there for ground. Now we're going to start with the lights for each one. I'm going to start with the green, and I'm going to plug my green cable, jumper cable, in with the positive slot on the LED, and that is going to go to, we're going to start with pin number 2 over here on the board. Make sure I get that right. Yep. So pin number 2, whoops, right there, you can see that. Pin number 2 on our board. I'm just going to continue connecting these LEDs and start with the next jumper. This is going to go from the yellow positive LED to number, you guessed it, number 3, and we're just going to keep going all the way up the board here. The red jumper is to the red positive, and that's going to go over here to number 3. And we're just going right through the boards here, right through the numbers all the way up to number 7. Again, we got a green one for the second set of lights. That's to the positive. That goes to number 5. Our yellow positive on the next set of lights. That goes to number 6. And finally we got the last light, the red from the positive LED. And that goes to number 7. There, okay. Excuse me, see if I can get this so you can see this set up here. There again, we got the black going into the ground, and green, yellow, red going to pins number 2, 3, and 4, and then green, yellow, red to pins number 5, 6, and 7. Now, with any luck, this should work. I've already got this board programmed, and we'll plug in our power. Turn this around so I get my power into it, and hold your breath here, see if you can get anything to work. There, the two red lights come on to start with, and there we go. We've got a green light. And the green should change in about 30 seconds. You'll see the yellow come on here. Come on now, 30 seconds. That's a long 30 seconds. There's our yellow. And go to red, and then this one will go to green. Hey, what do you know, it's working. So there's our little setup, how this works here. Now you can program these boards to change those times here. I've got them going to 30 seconds, 5 seconds on the yellow, and 2 seconds here to hold both sets of light on red before going to green. So it's a pretty simple setup. It's a real simple program. I'll go into the programming here in a little bit just to give you an idea how it works. And we'll be using different LEDs, of course. They're real tiny LEDs on the traffic lights themselves, but just to demonstrate the setup of the circuit. It's real simple. Okay, this was quite a project in itself. Just to make a little space on my table for my desktop, I just want to go over as briefly as I can without being too confusing some of the code that is used in this application, and I think it's a little easier if we look at a printed version of this instead of what's on my computer. It might be easier to read and make out. Arduino projects are called sketches, and they're basically a text file, and I've printed out the code for the traffic light sketch, and it runs about 2 pages because the font is quite large for this sheet of paper, so it fits just barely on 2 sheets of paper. And I'll go over it real quickly here if I can without being too confusing. So follow along here and see if we can make sense of the Arduino traffic light project. Once this code is compiled, I'll show you how it can be loaded onto your Arduino board. So all the Arduino sketches pretty much start with the same setup. You declare your variables at the beginning, and there are different variable types. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of the basics on these. Again, I suggest look at some tutorials about programming, and it'll make a little more sense to you. So I'm going to assume just a little bit of understanding in this as I go through this. But basically I set up 6 variables, 1 for each light. I've got east-west green, east-west yellow, east-west red, and I've got north-south green, north-south yellow, north-south red. And these correspond with the pin numbers in the board. Got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the lights. The next little bit of code is the delay periods that I've got for each light. Now this is in milliseconds, so 2000 would equate to 2 seconds, and I've got 1 delay period for the green, the yellow, the red, and a second one for the red I called delay red 2, and I'll show you what that one is for. The green and the red lights are going to hold for I guess this is 15 seconds. I thought I had it at 30 seconds, but 15 seconds is what it's at for now. The yellow light goes for 5 seconds. When it changes from green to red, it'll hold on the yellow for 5 seconds, and both sets of lights will hold for 2 seconds before the light will turn green again. One of the lights will turn green. This is just to make sure both sets of lights are on red for just a little bit before one set of lights returns to green, which is pretty typical for most intersections here. You'll notice the red lights both stay on for just a little bit before the cycle starts on the green again. The next little section is for pin modes. You have to set up your pin modes, and I've got all of these set for output. The east-west, yellow, green, red, and yellow, and then the north-south, green, red, yellow pin mode are all set to output on this. And the next little step here is pretty much what the Arduino board is cycling through. It just keeps running through this little routine until you tell it to stop or you turn it off. And this is the void loop. It starts out with a hold command for the red lights. So the red lights are both going to stay on hold for about 2 seconds. And you've got the delay red for 2 seconds. That's the one that'll turn on. This red light hold turns on both the red lights, and then it's going to hold for about 2 seconds here. And I've brought these broken down into about 4 different routines: cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, cycle 4, and we'll go into each one of those in a little more detail. Basically, the cycle 1 kind of sets up all the lights and turns them all on for the right setup, and then we put on the delay green, so it'll stay green for 15 seconds. Then we go to cycle 2, which turns on the yellow lights, and we do a delay yellow. We do a red light hold so that the traffic lights stay on red for a couple seconds, and then we do the delay red, so that's 2 seconds there. And then we go to cycle 4, which turns on, sets up the east-west lights for being green, and the north-south lights are then turned red. Get a delay red, and the cycle 3 I've got in here for working the other yellow lights. So I've got two little routines for the 2 yellow lights. And then we go into another. This breaks down, these are calling these little procedures, this little void loop. So we go on through this just keeps running and running, calling all these little procedures. So I'll go to cycle 1, for instance. You see here it's calling cycle 1. Well, this is cycle 1. If that makes sense, I hope it'll make some sense here too. We do a digital write on these pins to send a signal to it, and east-west green is pin number 1, and we're going to set this to high, which in this case is on. So wherever you see high or low, it means on or off. So the east-west lights are being set green. We're going to set to high. The yellow and the red we set to low or off. And then the north-south lights, the red one is set to on or high, and the north-south green and yellow lights are turned low or off. Cycle 2, we turn on the east-west yellow light, green light and red light are off. So it's a real simple little set of commands here. Again, we're turning on the green. The east-west green is, turned off. The east-west yellow light is turned on, and the east-west red light is off. So we just want the yellow light on. This is when we're transitioning from green light. We go to yellow for just a little bit before we go to red. That's what this does. It sets those lights on the east-west lights. Cycle 3, we turn on north-south yellow light. Green and red light are off. So this one's starting on setting the north-south yellow light to on, and the north-south green and red lights are off. Whoops, trying to stay on the picture here. So the yellow light is on, north-south green and red lights are off. Cycle 4, turn on the east-west red light, turn on the north-south green lights. So the east-west red light comes on, and the north-south green light comes on. So you got red light on one set of streets, the north-south, and the green light on the east-west. So here again, we're going through a little setup here where we're turning on and off the lights. The east-west red light is on, and the north-south green light is on. All the yellow lights are off. Oop, trying to keep in the camera here. And finally got the red light hold. This one turns off all the other lights except the 2 red lights. And this procedure lasts for about 2 seconds while we get the red lights on their hold position for 2 seconds. So it's real quick and dirty run through on the code. I've got a link to the code here in the description box, and I hope I didn't get too confusing on the code for this, but it's basically you declare some variables and set up some procedures. Again, this little piece of code here is what's basically running over and over again, calling each of these little procedures as it runs, and then here are all those procedures that it's calling: cycle 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the red light hold. So I hope that's not too confusing. This is what it looks like on the computer, and to load this I've got a little plug that goes into the USB port, and the other end of that looks like a little small printer cable. There's some printer cables that look like this. That goes into the Arduino board. Back up to our computer. Once we've written the code and saved it, you can compile the code. There's two ways you can check your code without loading it. Hang in here. There we go. See if I can get that right up here. If I can get my cursor over there. This will verify your code. You can check on this and it will verify if your code is good. And once you run through that, you'll see a little progress bar on the bottom of the screen, and down near the bottom of the screen you'll see sketch, some little notes about your sketch. And all went well. It compiled nicely. So once it's compiled, we'll go back up here, look at the top again. I'll use this little thing, the little arrow, and that will upload to the Arduino board. And again, if your code's in good shape, it will upload without error, and again gives you this happy little message down here about your sketch. So the board is now uploaded with this code. So clear as mud. I hope so. Hope that wasn't too confusing. Again, I recommend going out to some tutorials and look those up, and download the Arduino software. The software is free, so you can download that and have it on your computer. Once you've got it loaded on your computer, you can start programming and uploading code to your Arduino board. Okay, let's try to demonstrate how I'm making some of the other components for these traffic lights. This is a 3/32 inch styrene tube, and as close as I can, I try to cut about a 45-degree slice on here, and there's my little shroud, one of my little shrouds. You can see it's really teeny. So I keep cutting a couple of these. I'll make one cut at 45, and then I'll make another one at a square cut, and I'll try to cut them as short as I can and consistently as I can. There's another one. So I just keep cutting these little pieces here, and I've got a bunch of them, and some of them are too long, some are too short, so I just cut a bunch and pick the best ones to use for the little shrouds over the lights. And then I take 3 of them and I will glue them to a real thin sheet of styrene, and I've done that with a couple of them here already, 2 sets, and I'll paint them black. So here's 2 more sets of shrouds here. I don't think you can see that. Trying to get it focused for you. Those two more sets of shrouds. And once I've got them on the board here, I've got I believe this is a number 80 drill bit. But I just drill out the holes for them here. Clean those up a little bit. So drill those out. See a little bit of a hole behind those. Drill them out, and once those are drilled, I'll just cut these out with a pair of scissors. Because it's real thin styrene, I'll just cut them all out, and I've got a little set of shrouds made for my lights. And here are a few more shrouds that I've made. Haven't painted them yet, and the more I make these, the more I work with them, learn a few things. Before I was painting them and then drilling them out. I've learned it's better to drill them out first and then paint them, because the drill can kind of scrape off some of the paint and wind up having some little white spots show through. So better to drill them all out first, clean them up a little bit, and then paint them, and then you don't wind up scraping off the paint with the drill. Okay, I've made two more little shrouds here. You can see these. I've painted them, cut them out, and they're pretty small. You can see, drilled the holes in there. I might have to touch them up and paint them again, but these are now ready to put the LEDs in here. There we go, real teeny tiny little thingies. They're about a 1/4 inch or so, maybe. Yeah, about a 1/4 inch in size. So those are two more shrouds. Okay, I've already got the green light in here. I failed to show you this little step here. I put just a little bit of Gorilla Glue on here, just a teeny bit in there. And I've got my next light. Pardon me for the camera angles here. Next light, the yellow one. And that's going to go right in there. Whoops, right inside here. Just a little bit of glue on there, and I'll try to hold it steady for just a little bit. And I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit and let it set up. And once I've got the light mounted in there, I'll use this little battery just to check it, make sure it looks okay before the glue sets up too much, and I can still kind of readjust it a little bit. So I think this one's in a good spot there. And finally, gonna put in the red light. Again, a little dab. Whoops, sorry. That's what a mess. Okay, and then the red light. I'm going in here. And get that in there just enough, let it sit. Okay, now in order to kind of close up the back of the street light, or the traffic light, what I've got is a piece of evergreen channel. I think it's number 263 channel, and I've cut a little piece of the channel, and you can see it here. I made a little notch right here, and that little notch is to make room for the wires coming out of the back. So what I'm going to do is glue this little, if you can see this, I'm going to glue that little piece of channel onto the back of the traffic light to kind of get a little enclosure on the back of it. So wish me luck. Whoops. Come here. Up. There. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the little channel on the back there to make a little enclosure for that. Okay, so there you have the little enclosure on the back of the light, and try to clamp that down. You can see it's still not quite tight on there, but I got to try to clamp it down and let it sit for a while, let it set up, and then I'll come back and give it a little sanding and square it up a little bit. And you can see a few little rough edges on it. We'll square it up some and paint it, and move on to the next step, which would be threading these little wires down the tube that I've got for the light poles. So that's one step taken care of here. It's going to need a little painting and cleaning up yet. Alright, I put that little channel on the back of the light, and I managed to squeeze it inside my little clamp here, so you can see I've got it real lightly clamped so that little channel piece will fit nice and snug on the back and get a good bond on there. Okay, the main pole or mast for the light pole, this is a 3/32 inch aluminum tube, and I've cut it to 3 inches long. Give myself enough space or enough length to anchor the pole on the layout once I get there. Now, one of the tough things to do is to get a hole on the side of these things. What I do is I'm going to start putting one right about here, and I start it by just very lightly trying to kind of dig a little spot with the X-Acto knife here, and I'm just going to rough it enough. And then I've got my number 80 drill here, and once I get just a little bit of a start on that hole, see what I mean? It's trying to slip on you. Try to get a little start on it. And if it keeps popping out on me, yep, it keeps popping, so I got to try to get it a little deeper. Maybe I should even try a smaller drill bit to start with, but try to get kind of a little pilot hole going here with the knife. Okay, I think I'm through. Yeah, I'm through. Now, what I'm going to take is a little motor drill, and I've got a little tiny burr on here that's just enough to, just wide enough to make the hole I want. So I'm going to ream that out a little bit. There we go. Just want to clean that out a little bit, make a little bigger hole in the mast. And then I'm going to make another little hole. I've got a rod here that's a little further along here. I'll show you why I'm making two holes here. The hard thing is to get this just right on the, get these holes opposite each other. See if I can make a little mark here. Now I want to get these holes opposite each other on the pole, and I'll show you why in a little while here. But we're just going to start with drawing another hole here. Okay, I've got my mast here, my pole, and I've drilled another hole a little bit lower on the other side here, and I'm not going to enlarge this one. I'm going to leave this one the same size. I don't need that one to be any bigger. But I do kind of give it a little downward angle here if I can. And this will become apparent in a little while. I'll show you why I'm doing this, but I just try to clean it out with the drill, and then we'll come back here and we'll kind of file this down a little bit, even it up a little bit. Just try to clean it up a little bit. And there is our little light pole here, and I'll show you why I've made two holes here in a little bit. Alright, next I've got a piece of 1/16 inch aluminum tubing, and I've cut this to about 1.5 inches in length, and what I want to do is just kind of clean out the ends of this tube here, take some of the rough spots off of there. Now that hole I drilled in the other mast, that is going to be where I'm joining the mast that extends out over the lanes over the street, and our traffic light is going to go on the end of this pole, such as I have done here on this one that's a little further along, so you can kind of get an idea where we're going. And this lamp, or this pole, has already got the street lamp on the end of it here. I've painted the little enclosure, a little box there. Now the wires are showing just a little bit. I might have to drag out a little more paint and cover that up. I couldn't quite get those wires in there, but I'm surprised I got 6 wires go through this little tiny 16th inch tube, and I'll show you how we got there. Here is another set of lights. I put the little channel back on there. It needs a little shaping and sanding to kind of get it evened out here, but you get the idea. Once this is glued on here, I do a little filing and sanding and get it kind of squared up, and then we paint it, and it looks like a nice little box when we get done. I suppose if you really wanted to, you could put a little putty or something in here to close up that gap. Might not be a bad idea. Alright, next step is to get all these wires in here. It's a little tricky to get them all in there. That's why it helps to kind of clean out the end of the tube here. Once you get it cleaned out, they seem to go in there pretty easy. Try to keep a good light on this here for you. There we go. Got them all in there, and they go through pretty easy, actually. Coming out the other end, and gently keep pushing them through here. A little tug on the other end, and a little bit, and try to pull them in just as snug as I can. I'm not going to get them all the way in there. There's going to be a little bit of exposed wire on the end there, but try to do the best I can. Pull them in real tight, and there. Now I got the lights on the boom. Oh, I got to paint this little piece here still, so that won't be so hard. Paint that. Now, one thing to mention here, notice on this lamp that goes out over the street, looking at the front of the lamp, the wires all go off to the right. I'm going to put another set of lights on the main pole, and those wires are coming off to the left because I want it to be on this side of the pole, and that's what that other hole is in there for. I'm going to do another tricky part here where we thread these wires down this little hole and get these lights mounted on the side of the pole. Okay, I finally got these all started easily, and as I was saying, the trick is to grab these wires as close as you can to the end and just push them in a little bit at a time because they like to kink. And a little backward pull helps to kind of straighten out any bunching that might have happened. Oh, they're already coming out the bottom of the... If I got all of them out here? I think so. Once you get them out on the bottom, then you can pull them through, and they come through pretty easy. So, okay, we finally got that one through there. Once it gets close enough, you can get one more little push, and you can finally get all these wires pushed through here. So this represents the lights that's out over the lanes of the street, and then there's usually a light right on the pole itself. And I'm going to use just a little bit more of Gorilla Glue to just kind of fasten that right to the side of the post, and I'll use a little more glue to fix this joint in here to the Gorilla Glue. Alright, this is now glued here. It's just a little dab of glue in that joint to glue the pole here, the smaller beam to the pole here, and just a little bit of Gorilla Glue on the back here. I'm going to have to paint that again. It's a little shiny because of the glue got a little carried away there. A little messy, but we'll paint that so it's not so shiny right there. And one more thing to add to this, I'm going to add the light pole on the top. I want to have a light pole, the street light on top of this, and we'll add that. And that will be one last thing to add to this traffic light. One last thing to do, I've gathered all the red wires and the black wires together just to verify that these lights are still working. They're a little flickery because my connection isn't the best, and make sure all the lights are working still, and they are. Whoopie doop. And I'll do the same for the lights on the boom and verify that all the lights are still working. I've already tested the lights on the boom up there, and they're working fine, so that's a good deal. All the lights are still working. Okay, the last piece of the traffic light here is going to be this street lamp. Now again, I'm using a piece of 1/16 inch aluminum tubing. I thread the LED, this is an LED, on some nice long leads here. I put that through the tube first and then very gently bent the tube to the shape I want. And then this is going to go down through the top of the pole. I hope. I went down there once before. Let's see if I can gently push it down. There it goes. And that 16th inch tube fits right inside the 3/32 inch tube. And there is my street light to kind of finish off the top of the light pole. Now the street light's going to be kind of at a 45-degree angle to the rest of the lamp here. So we'll glue that little piece in place. My boom's gotten a little loose here. I might have to try gluing that again. And I had to cut an inch off the bottom of my pole here. I think it's still long enough, so now it's only 2 inches long, but I think that's enough to get this in here in order to get the leads for the street light. Now these will be on a separate circuit, be on the same circuit as my lighting for the street lights in the buildings and so forth. So that's going to be on a 3-volt power supply. I'll have to solder some leads to that so I can thread it down through the board. But there, we're pretty well done with the street light, or the traffic light and street light. I painted the top of the LED some black color just to give a little covering over the top so it didn't shine through the top. And we're pretty well finished with the traffic light slash street light on the top here. Okay, I'm going to try to demonstrate the wiring here. Hope this won't be too confusing. You can see there's a bunch of wires coming out of the bottom of the light pole here, the traffic light. Let's see if I can get a little better picture here. There are 6 red wires and 6 black wires. The black wires, of course, are the negative wires for the LEDs. They are grouped in 2 sets. I've got one set here, 3 wires, so the ground wires going into a resistor, and the other set of 3 going into another resistor. So those are all my ground wires. Now the red wires, the positive wires, are also grouped but in pairs of 2, and I've added some longer leads here just so I can kind of get a little separation here in what I'm doing. It's kind of a mess, they're all braided up. But these are extensions for the leads. Now I've got 2 of them, there's one from each light. There's 2 pairs of lights on each traffic light, and I'm kind of grouping them down into one long wire, and at the end I've got a short piece of 24 gauge wire that's so I can stick this into the breadboard. Now you notice I got this one is red for the red lights, this one is green for the green lights, and I don't have any yellow, so I'm using blue. So pretend for now that this is a yellow wire. So I've got group this all down into 3 connections for the positive and 2 connections for the negative. Now I tried using just one resistor, all the negative wires going into a common resistor, but for some reason it wouldn't work that way. I tried it with the LEDs on a breadboard and it wouldn't work. So I'm thinking it's better to group these into 3, one for each group of lights. And I'm going to plug all this back into my board here. Hope this doesn't get too confusing. We're going back to the Arduino board setup. Remember when we did this originally, I've got 1 ground wire going into the negative slot here, and again from pins 2, 3, 4, green, yellow, and red, and then pins 5, 6, and 7. Again, we're doing green, yellow, red. Let's try to straighten this out so I got them in the same order here. Not to be confusing. There we go. Green, yellow, and red. Now I'm going to take one of my negative poles from the it's got the resistor on it, and I'm going to stick that in the negative slot, and also do the same with the other resistor. That's going to go in the negative slot. It's a little different now because I don't have the it's quite the same setup as I did when I first demonstrated this circuit. And I'm going to put the red one here. I've got the green one. I'll put that in the green slot here. And finally the yellow. So it's getting a little confusing with all the wires and things. I apologize for that. So there's one light hooked up. I've got another light. You can imagine this one being the opposing lanes here. We'll back this up a little bit and we'll see in a little bit. And we'll go ahead and plug this in the same way. All the resistors on the negative poles are going into the negative slots. Pardon all the wires here. I'm trying to add a little length to these wires so I can thread something under the board. And I'm just matching up my colors. Red to red, green to green, and blue to yellow, since I don't have a yeah, blue or yellow wire, so I'm using blue instead. There. Now, there's my setup here. And again, pardon all the wires and things. It looks worse than it is. It's not complicated. It's just busy. And we'll go ahead and plug this in. And get power going to it. And see if we can see the lights. And the lights are working. Oops, if I can get them up there. There we go. There, you see. Our traffic lights are working. If not a little out of focus, but they are working. This would be safe for the east-west lanes, and this one would be safe for the north-south lanes. So I've got 2 of them working here. I'll need 4 altogether to light up the whole intersection. So it's hard for the crummy background here, it's so cluttery. But you get the idea how the lights are working. And got 2 more to finish to get 4 lights working for the intersection. And then we're going to go into the installation on the next video. So I hope this hasn't been too confusing for you. And you've learned a little something, how to build some traffic lights. So I'm going to finish it up here. It's gotten kind of long for this time. So tune in next time for the installation on the layout on how these go. So thanks for staying. Thanks for watching. And we'll do more of this on the next episode of the Minneapolis Northwestern N-Scale Model Railroad Monthly Video Journal. Whoopee! Take care, everyone.